Come on in. Whoa. It's way too close.
Okay, I think we're live. What's up, everybody? I think I'm going to give it, like, as always, I think I'm going to podcast coming up. Before we get all that, run through a few things for having more access. Okay. Can you hear me now? Are we good? Can you guys hear me? I'm checking with my team behind the scenes. Okay, I'm good. Okay, so let's try that again. So we have some really fun guys coming on today. We have a bunch of Master Cicerones coming on. Before we get to that, I just wanted to run through a few housekeeping things on the brewery's end. So first thing, we have some really cool beers dropping tomorrow. Our Rue Pilsner, which is a seasonal. It's only been on draft before, is coming out. So we'll have Rue Pilsner, and then along with that, we'll have Offshoot 3. So 3 years of Offshoot beers. We have a very special double dry hopped, double hazy IPA coming out. Those will be available in cans starting tomorrow, both online and in the tasting rooms to go. So kind of some perfect releases for the long weekend. Outside of that, we actually still have our archiveversary going on. So we pulled some really fun beers out of the archive. There's some anniversary beers, some old ales, some Black Tuesday vintages that are available right now at thebrewery.com. And there's some special bottles also at the tasting rooms to go. And then there's also some really fun ways to get those beers right now. So we started doing local delivery. If any of you have not seen it already, we are offering same-day local delivery throughout Orange County and in parts of Los Angeles. So if you go on our website, you live in one of those areas, you can check out. If you order by 2 p.m., we'll deliver it to you the same day. So that's actually really cool. Another thing we have going on this weekend that's really fun is we have some new pilots coming out of the pilot system. And we also have a brand new crowler format. So we're doing little 16-ounce crowlers. Give you a taste of some of the bigger beers that you don't want to do a 32-ounce crowler in, or maybe you do, and you should if you want to. So those beers that just came off of our pilot system are Choco Nana, which is going to be a pastry stout inspired by banana pancakes. So that one's pretty cool. And then we have a grasshopper pastry stout, which is a mint chocolate cookie, maybe inspired by some type of Girl Scout cookie beer. So lots of cool stuff happening. Thanks again for joining us. And now I will not talk much for the rest of the time, and I'll let you guys get to the people you want to hear. So the first person I'm going to bring on, most of you know, if you're brewery fans, we have our founder, Patrick Rue, is jumping on with us right now. So I want to bring on Patrick. Come on in, Patrick. What's up, man?
Hey,
good to see you.
Hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm glad we can hear you because apparently I wasn't working. But I mean, most of the brewery fans know you. I'm sure we have some new guests coming in with all the fun guys we have on tonight. So if you want to give a quick intro and let everyone know who you are, what you're up to, that'd be awesome.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm up here in Napa Valley, starting up a winery. So I don't get to come down to the brewery as much as I'd like to, but hopefully once this COVID thing's over, I get to hang out with you guys more. Yeah, essentially making wine in a place kind of near Yountville, and then we have a tasting room in St. Helena that's currently closed. So if any of you guys want to drink some beer with me, but drink some wine first and then drink some beer after. All the wineries shut down at 4:00. So 4:00 after is the time to drink beer. Come up and visit me. It's called Erosion Wine Company.
It's awesome, man. Thanks again for coming on. It's good to see you.
Thanks.
So we have a couple more guests. Let's bring on, I think we should talk to maybe Patton Avery, next guest up, if you guys want to come on and tell us a little bit about what you're up to. There we go.
Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Yay.
Perfect.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on. I know there's a lot of brewery fans on here today that might not know who you guys are. So if you want to tell them a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you're up to, and yeah.
All right, you want me to start?
Let people know.
So my name is Pat Fahey. I am a Master Cicerone. I actually work for the Cicerone certification program. I'm in charge of their content. I've been there for about 8 years at this point. Yeah, that's the most of it. We're coming at you from Chicago right now. So.
And my name is Averie Swanson. I am also Master Cicerone. I am the former head brewer and co-owner of Jester King Brewery down in Austin, Texas. Moved up here to Chicago about 1.5 years ago or so and started my own label here called Keeping Together. Yeah, just drinking beer and hanging out.
Have you been keeping it together?
Trying. It's tough. Harder than usual.
Yeah. Good.
Cool. Okay. Next up, let's bring on Neil. Neil, where are you at?
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you. I think I don't know what happened. We were testing for like 30 minutes and then
you had me a little freaked out. I've had some audio issues in recent weeks. So, hello. Welcome everybody out there in the internet world. I'm Neil Witte. I also work for the Cicerone certification program on a part-time basis. I also have a business called Craft Quality Solutions, and I work with all tiers of the business on quality issues, mainly out in the marketplace. And I have been spending a lot of time recently kind of beating the drum about quality as things start back up, and working with a lot of retailers and breweries and distributors on different levels of trying to spread the word about how to treat your system the right way after having it hibernated and then starting it back up. So that's been a lot of my focus lately.
You have any like go-to tips for everybody starting up? Like what's the first thing they should be doing when they're starting to put stuff on draft?
If I had to sum it up in 3 words, I'd say clean your system.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for coming on, Neil. Next up, let's bring on Joe.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Sounds good.
All right. I'm Joe, and I'm the I guess I'm the newest Master Cicerone in the group, number 19. So proud to be here tonight. I'm down in from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I am the co-founder of Sugar Creek Brewing Company down here. So pleasure to be on board tonight. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. And so last up, we're going to bring on Jason. Jason, how's it going, man? Thanks for coming on.
How you doing? Cheers. Hey guys, Jason Pratt, also a Master Cicerone. I work for Molson Coors. I'm the Director of Beverage Innovation there for North America. So covering everything from beer, wine, spirits now, since we're a beverage company. Oh, I see. I know, just excited to be here, guys. Excited to talk about some beer.
Cool. I mean, this is one of the more exciting groups of people we've gotten together on these things. So we had a lot of people excited. There's a lot of questions coming in. I think at the end of the show, make sure you guys throw questions in the comments. we'll let you know in the comments when to start throwing them in. But we're gonna kind of start off, kind of just introing what the program is. So, Pat Fahey, not our Pat. First question up, man. Like, what is the Cicerone program? What are the 3 levels, and then what kind of expectations are there once you've gotten to each level? So, what does it take?
So, Cicerone program's been around at this point for about 12 years. Started by Ray Daniels, who is kind of old guard of beer knowledge. Worked for Brewers Association and worked in a number of different roles in the beer industry before he started the program. But the general idea behind the program is to certify people at various levels of their knowledge across a number of different disciplines within beer. You know, the reason that he started the program was he was going to bars and being served by people who did not know how to take care of beer, knew significantly less than the people that they were serving, and so were giving kind of very bad service experiences. The Cicerone program kind of exists as like the beer world version of the small A program, and ultimately the goal is that as more people know their trade a little bit better and, you know, increase their level of knowledge, that they're going to be able to give consumers a better beer experience when they go out. I think that kind of, does anybody else want to say anything about holistically what Cicerone's about? I need to take a drink, so if anybody wants to
said it perfectly.
Sounds pretty good.
So
I wasn't totally listening, but it was really good.
I appreciate your honesty.
I'll chime in on that. I think one of the things about Cicerone is that it's evolved a little bit beyond just for people who serve beer.
Absolutely.
You know, that was the impetus of it, but it's gone beyond that, and it's become kind of the gold standard for beer professionals to demonstrate that they have a certain level of knowledge about beer. And, you know, we've also been drawing in a lot of beer enthusiasts too. I've met plenty of people who have passed certified beer server who don't work in the beer business at all. They just love to drink beer. So it's the scope has expanded quite a bit.
Yeah, and even though that's kind of what the impetus was for the program, that isn't even where like our first concentrations of people who were getting certified was prominently within breweries. So yeah, we have seen people from all across the industry and from outside of the industry get involved, sometimes just because they want to improve their level of knowledge about beer. People just want to know more about this awesome beverage. So dig in really quick on the 4 levels of the program. First level, certified beer server, then certified Cicerone, advanced Cicerone, Master Cicerone. Give you an idea on like the scope. We have certified beer servers. I think there are about 130,000 in the world at this point, and that spans across almost 100 different countries. You work from there up to the top. There are, as was mentioned in some of the postings for this, there are 19 Master Cicerones. So it winnows down pretty precipitously as the levels go up.
And are there any, like, once you become a Master Cicerone, like, are there any expectations of you? Like, what do you have to renew your certification? What do you do from there?
You can't be wrong. You can't be wrong ever. That's the expectation.
You start making wine. That's typically what happens.
Yes.
So here's one for maybe the whole group, and we saw a lot of this same question coming in is, and this might come up in another question later, but really, like, what's the starting point? How do we have a lot of aspiring Cicerones out there? How do you get started? And that's open. Whoever wants to tackle it. We're going to ask you all about your journeys a little bit later. So just in general, like, maybe this is a good one for Pat. Like, what's a good jumping off point?
Which Pat?
Pat Rue.
Oh, this one. You know, I want to say, and this isn't true for everybody, because for some people, you know, they hear about it through their work and they go about it that way. But honestly, it starts like the way that you begin when you want to learn more about anything. Like, I know for me, it very much started with a passion for beer, and that leading into me tracking down books that I could use to kind of start to learn more about beer. First book, like one of the first beer books that I read, and I know this is like a first beer book for a lot of people, is Randy Mercer's Tasting Beer. It's like a really excellent survey of just kind of the whole landscape of beer. And it's one of the resources that we recommend for both the first and the second level of the program. So, I mean, I can't count the number of people that I've talked to that's like, yep, that's the first book I read on beer. So that's an awesome starting point if you're looking to learn more.
There's a great quote. What's the handshake? Can you guys show us? Like, I think Avery and Pat have to show us the handshake here.
You already, everybody missed it. We already did it.
You don't do it anymore because it passes germs.
Oh, that's a good point. There we go.
It's not COVID friendly. Sorry.
Yeah, we don't do it. Maybe later. Nice.
Okay, so here's one that I want to jump into, and this is one of my favorite things to do. Just put Brewery Patrick on the spot. How do you? So the brewery, kind of one of our things is we don't really brew to style, right? So how do you perfect a beer that has no true style? What does that mean to you?
Boy, perfect is really subjective, and perfect, I guess, is too. I think a perfect beer, to perfect a beer, I think, is that you did what you achieved to do and that it tastes delicious and people like it. So I would, when you're trying to make something that doesn't belong in a style, maybe you're taking inspiration from different styles. It's all about hitting the target that you set out. I don't know. Is that a bad answer?
No, I think that's a really good answer. I think that's perfect. So taking that then, in your opinion, have we at the brewery what's the perfect beer that we've made? If any?
Well, it's one that I've had very little to do with, but I'm a huge drinker of, is the Rue Keller Helles. It's just such a classic, delicious beer that I try to search for faults and I can't find them. So if I made it, I'd be able to find faults, I'm pretty sure.
No, it's a good one. Lots of crushing of that beer lately happening at the brewery. So kind of tacking onto that, what about an imperfect beer? What's the most imperfect beer we've made where you're just like, this didn't hit the marks?
Yeah, a long time ago, I wanted to. I piloted a beer to basically, I wanted a lot of diacetyl. I wanted like a strong butter flavor to go with barrel aging. I wanted like this, I don't know, it's like buttery dessert, butter cake with, vanilla frosting on it sort of beer. And diacetyl does not taste like real butter. Diacetyl tastes like rancid butter or, just chemicals, and it's terrible. So, so that was a dumb idea, but it was only, I don't know, I think it was before our larger pilot system. So I think it was only 15 gallons that was wasted on that.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Okay, so next up, I think this is going to be a fun one. Did we just lose? We just lost somebody. They'll be back.
Joe.
Joe's gone. He'll be back. But so I kind of want to hear, and I think a lot of people are interested in hearing each of your journeys to becoming a Master Cicerone. So what kind of sparked the passion, and then how did you get there? What does it take? I know we saw a lot of questions. Like there was a great one on Reddit earlier, asking like, if you don't work at a bar or a brewery and you don't have those opportunities to try all these beers all the time and really like hone in your sensory pieces, how do you get there? So maybe we start with Jason. Jason can kind of walk us through, like, where'd you start? Where are you now? And how'd you get there?
Yeah, so crazy kind of path for me to get into the beer industry, honestly. My choice came down to beer or vegetables by the end of the taste. I made the right choice, I think. But I started off, my background's actually in microbiology and molecular genetics, so I made that logical leap into the brewing industry and ultimately marketing from there. So that's kind of my path to this. But I started off doing like research microbiology and started applying for jobs. And there was a job in Detroit that was a vegetable company, and there was a job in Milwaukee that was a beer company. So I thought, beer sounds cool. Let me go take a leap and try this thing. And I really fell in love with it at that point. So worked there for a couple of years and then started teaching as a part of like the new employee classes. So as new employees would come through, I was kind of teaching them about beer. That transitioned into a job that actually was just about teaching beer. So I moved out to Denver for that, traveled around and got to talk to distributors and retailers about beer and food pairings, and was teaching classes to our employees too. And at that point, the Cicerone program was something that they thought was going to be that good kind of external stamp on the things that we were doing. So everybody that I was working with got involved at that point. My server level and certified level actually came pretty close to each other. And then I took a little bit of a break in between and then did master. But it was one of those things where I was standing up in front of people on a daily basis, telling them you need to keep pushing yourself, right? No matter where you are on this beer journey, there's always something more to learn. And then finally came to this realization that if I was living that, I can't keep standing up in front of people and saying that. So just signed up. And that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give for people. If you're thinking about, no matter what level it is, if you're thinking about taking it, just sign up. Because you'll always find an excuse to put it off, and you're always going to have something else going on. But if you put that line in the sand for yourself and just sign up for the exam, you'll make yourself get ready for it. So just sign up, I guess, is my advice there. But yeah, that's my story. Passed in 2015, I want to say, and then I've been kind of living that Master Cicerone life ever since.
Can I jump in really quick and just like add a little bit to Jason's story?
Okay. Tell us, man.
So first of all, as should be clear by the fact that there are so few people that have passed the exam, like the master exam is brutal. Like it is a brutal experience. And we hear people all the time that come in and are like, I'm going to be the next Master Cicerone. And like, we don't want to rain on your enthusiasm, but like the odds are it's going to be a hard path to get there. And so I remember Ray coming back from this trip. He had been out in Denver, and like this group of folks from Miller Coors, they were called the Trade Brewers, which was that educational group that Jason was talking about. And they brought him out, and there were like 6 or so at the time, I think. And they were like, we want everybody on this team to be a Master Cicerone. And we were like, okay. And to date, 3 of those 6 people are among the 19 Master Cicerones. So they had at the time like a group of really exceptionally knowledgeable folks, and Jason was the first of that group to pass. So
yeah, that was fun. Kind of, you could see the skepticism on his face when he showed up that day too to talk about it. Like, all right, here we go. But it was fun. And I think, again, that was one of the times, I guess, in my life too, that I was around some really passionate beer people on a daily basis. And we always were pushing each other and kind of bouncing ideas off each other. And I can't stress that enough too. It's nice to have a buddy in this, or 2 or 3 or more, that you can kind of go and bounce ideas off of. Because if you're the most knowledgeable beer person in your group, kind of need a new group, I think. You have to kind of push yourself outside of that and make sure that you're doing something to advance your knowledge.
Do you have a beer buddy in particular you'd like to give a shout out to?
If Dan's out there, I'll give both Dan and Brian. The other 2 guys that passed are kind of my crew. But Dan and I actually just got back. We were back before this whole quarantine lockdown thing. We actually got a chance to gallivant around Europe together last year and went to Belgium for a little bit. We're over in the UK and just pop into Trappist breweries and stuff. But I mean, we were going to do it again this summer and go to a couple other spots and hit Germany up, but lockdowns and stuff happened. But yeah, I'll give a shout out to Dan and Brian. What's going on, guys? They left me, so I'm solo at Miller Coors now, or most of the they're off doing their own thing, but hope they're happy.
That's awesome, man. Thanks. That was a great story. I was going to go to Joe since he popped in and popped back out, it looks like, but let's Neil, man, tell us a little bit about how you got to Master Cicerone level.
Well, yeah, so I got into beer like in the early 90s, like learning how to homebrew, and I guess that's when I kind of realized that I was kind of an obsessive type that like I didn't know anybody else who was home brewing. I just decided to pick it up and figure out how to do it. And I picked up like one of the most difficult home brewing books that you could probably get to learn how to do it. But I figured it out and then kind of decided that I was going to work my way into the beer business. I studied German and philosophy in college. And so, it's not like a natural path to getting into the beer business. But, I got into the brewing business and got a job as a brewer at Boulevard Brewing Company. And then after brewing for like 3 years, I moved into a role of field quality manager. So I was working out in the marketplace, dealing with all the issues that come up with the beer in the market. And after doing that for, that was in like 2000. And so, that evolved into more of a training role where, I was doing a lot of beer education because, if you're going to tell a bartender how they need to pour beer, then you better kind of explain to them why that matters and explain to them a little bit about beer in general and, why it matters to, handle the beer the right way. And so I was doing a lot of beer education in that role. And then I think I saw something, it might've been on the Brewers Association forum or something somewhere about, Ray Daniels starting this certification program. And this was in 2007. It was like late 2007. And I'm like, that sounds like something that the industry could really use. And that's perfect for like what I do. It's like some type of credential. So, I with the support of my employer at the time, I'm like, all right, I'll do this thing. And, so I took certified beer server exam. And then I sat for the first certified Cicerone exam that they offered. That was in April of 2008 at Craft Brewers Conference in San Diego. And so I passed, and I was one of the first, I think, 4. Pat's saying 4. Okay, so it was the first 4 certified Cicerones. And at that point, it was like, what's a Cicerone? Like, nobody knows what the heck this is. We're still trying to like build a name for it. And but I thought it was cool, and now I was like, yeah, I like this. It's forcing me to learn more, studying, and then this was way before advanced was introduced, and so the next step was Master. When he introduced Master, which I think was in 2009, I'm like, hey, I did certified Cicerone, I'll do Master Cicerone, and I took the test and failed. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to take no for an answer. And I took it the next year, and I failed again. And and at that point, I'm like, all right, like this is really, really hard. And I really my score like that much in a year. And so I took a break and took a year off and studied all the things that I felt like I needed to study and like, really focused in, and just barely across the line in 2012, but nonetheless, and so I was number 6.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Was there a portion of the exam that kept stumping you, or was there like an area that you were just like, man, this is what area was it that you had to hone in on and really?
Yeah,
focus?
so Ray told me a long time ago that one of the interesting things about the different people that come through the program is that everybody kind of has their strong suit and their weak suit. And, my strong suit is draft beer. And so, I helped to write a lot of the resources that were the study guides. So that portion was, that was my strong suit. But my weak suit was beer styles. And, a lot of that was because I worked for one brewery for a really long time. And so I knew those beers backwards and forwards, right? Like Boulevard Pale Ale, like you can hand me 20 amber colored beers that all look the same, and I could just smell them all. I could pick that beer out. That like I know those beers, right? But you get me outside of Boulevard beers, and all of a sudden I like didn't really know all that much. Like, so yeah, I can name, 5 different American IPAs from 3 different countries, but can I talk about the differences between those? Maybe not. It was like kind of that level of differentiation of like commercially available brands of given styles. And then, of course, that all transfers over into beer and food pairings too, because if you have to like put together a beer dinner, or you have to like pull from all these beer styles to like use examples for food pairings, and you only know like 2/3 of them, then you're already kind of starting with one arm tied behind your back. So that was what I really needed to study. And I dove in really hard to that. And, I would just go out and I would buy, I would do like style studies and buy like, 8 different Saisons or 8 different Oktoberfests or whatever. And I just call up my buddy. I'm like, hey, I'm studying tonight. You want to come over? He'd be like, yeah. And we'd come over and we just like taste all these beers. I'd have my BJCP guidelines and taking notes on all the differences and similarities and how they fit or didn't fit into style guidelines and all these like, widely available examples. And I did that, and I did country studies and like just dove into it for a good couple of years. And it was enough to kind of push me over the line.
Nice, man. So what I kind of heard there was you got to drink a lot. You got to try a lot of different things.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'd buy like 8 beers, and like half of them were 750s, and we'd dump a bunch of beer down the drain at the end of the day. I mean, you can't possibly drink and consume every last drop of every beer you buy for studying. It's not practical. You run into
Nobody tells you about everybody's heard of the freshman 15, but nobody talks about the Master Cicerone 25. Drinking and eating everything, right?
You take it 3 times before you pass it. And
oh man,
it's brutal. I went in there and I said, number 3, man. I said, it's either 3 strikes you're out, or 3rd time's a charm. I am not taking this thing a 4th time. And thankfully I passed.
I said the same thing, and I remember telling myself, well, Neil had to take it 3 times before he passed it, so it's okay that I'm having to take it a 3rd time in order to pass it.
Yep.
Cool, man. Thanks, Neil, for sharing. Let's go back to Joe. Joe, welcome back on. You want to kind of walk us through your journey to becoming a master?
Sure, yeah. I did an update on my computer today, so sure enough, Chrome wants to crash out on me, but thanks for your patience. Yeah, so for me, I started the Cicerone program right when I opened the brewery up. And the idea was that there is so much money invested in the brewery, it's over $1 million of hard-earned life savings and leverage to the hilt with your bank loans. And I knew quite a bit about beer, I felt like, but, are you willing to write $1 million check and say that's how much you know about it? So doing some internet research, looking at BJCP, looking at Siebel, looking at consultants, different things, I realized that it wouldn't hurt to try to get as much education as I possibly could. So pretty much the next year, after you get through like that first year of just putting everything together and trying to get your beers out, I dove into some, personal education, and I started with a certified beer server, obviously went through the whole ranks. I am not too embarrassed to say that I took everyone more than once, except for CBS. I took the CBS exam, then certified Cicerone, passed the written, but failed the tasting. Then went to advanced Cicerone, and I sat in the first 25 or 30 people, I think, that sat for that exam. Pat would have to weigh in on that. I'm not sure. But I know I was up there on day 2 of the first time he had ever given the exam. Again, passed the written, but failed the tasting. So I realized, shoot, I got a problem on the tasting side. So dove into that big time and studied like crazy, worked really hard. I worked with Dr. Simpson, Bill Simpson from Aruxa quite a bit, went overseas to visit him there, and did everything I could, beg, borrow, and steal to try to get enough money to go to his seminars and classes and stuff. And then I took Master Cicerone, I think, the first time in 2017, and I felt like I did really well on the tasting, but everything else I did bad on. So it's like, I think Avery and Neil, my journey was, and I'm kind of intimidated, folks, just because, let's see, 1, 2, 4 of the people on the panel here were my examiners. So I'm having flashbacks just looking at them.
I feel the same way, Joe. Talking about it.
Maybe that's why my computer shut down, but I still kind of I know, but I still kind of feel like I just squeaked through, and fortunately 2019 was my year. I'm sure Patrick Rue can maybe weigh in on this, but balancing the business and your family life and all of that stuff to try to take on Master Cicerone at the same time was super challenging. So I'm not embarrassed to say it took me a few times to get through, but I think I'm better for it. So on to the next one.
Kind of
what's the next level?
Want to tap into something Neil said, and it was pretty interesting. Do you feel like you knew what your strong suits and your weak suits were when kind of tackling that exam? Like what was your area of strength, and where did you have to kind of study a little bit more, brush up, work on?
Joe froze up.
Is he gone?
What's that? No, I'm here. I'm here. One more time. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So Neil mentioned earlier, like everyone sort of has their strong suits and their weak suits. What do you think yours were when taking the exam? Like where did you feel really confident, and where did you need to brush up on a bit?
Mine is wholeheartedly in persistence. So I don't know if it's a section on the exam, but it's in perseverance. So I think you have to have some of that to get to this level. But I was equally weak everywhere. No, that's not funny. But I think Ray actually told me after my first time, he said, Joe, I was really surprised to see your brewing scores, because for a guy that owns a brewery, I was expecting a little better on this part of the exam.
His bedside manner.
That's brutal.
I said, Ray, I was expecting better too. What are you going to do? So I ended up doing better eventually, but I think I got it figured out a little bit.
Awesome, man. But thanks for sharing your story. Let's go over to Patrick, kind of walk us through same thing. What's up, Patrick?
Hey, what's up? So yeah, the Cicerone program got started right around the same time that the brewery opened. And for the first few years, I was just kind of underwater, so there was no chance of me doing anything about it. But I, thought it was pretty cool. I had 2 employees who passed the certified Cicerone before me, and that kind of lit a fire. I'm like, oh shit, I guess I have to catch up with these guys and show them who's boss, literally. So that was Steph Ferrari and Ben Weiss, if they're watching. So congrats, guys. But ultimately, I saw it as a way. I wanted really, once I got into it, I wanted every employee, especially those who are serving customers and educating people, to go through this. There's nothing worse than having someone who is trying to educate you that's saying the wrong thing. And especially when it's the wrong thing, it's just like, I don't know. Anyway, well, good. It's just, you have to know enough to know you don't know the answer sometimes, and say, oh, I'll take a look at it, get back to you. Anyway, so once I got past the certified, there wasn't the advanced at that point. So I saw that it was probably 6 months later after I passed certified that I saw that the master was available in LA. My God, that's just 45 minutes away. I'm just going to go take it. So I think not that many people were signed up for it at that point, and I signed up maybe a few weeks before, and it didn't really study. It's kind of showed up, and I think Neil, that was when you passed it. I was like, oh, what's up, Neil? What's up, Julia? All these people. They're like, shh, like they're all freaking out. Like you can smell farts in the air. Like people are very nervous. So I think it was pretty apparent that I wasn't cut out for it that first time around. So that was in 2012. And I guess that kind of made me angry. I'm like, shit, like I felt like I knew a lot about beer, but I don't think I do. I don't think I know enough to become a Master Cicerone. So that was very motivating to pass it. So 2 years later, signed up for it again and studied for about 6 months straight. Made it my job essentially. We were doing any expansions. Business was in pretty good shape. We had a lot of good people around us. So I kind of showed up to work and sat at my desk and studied. And if anybody wanted to contact me, they could. But I was just studying pretty much. And employees were giving me blind tastings, and I had a study group that we met, on Zoom like this. So that was really helpful. There were people that I studied with, Julia Hertz, Ben Weiss, who was at the brewery. He passed certified before me. James Ty from New York and Brendan Woodcock. I had to write down their names. So yeah. Anyway, hi guys. Anyway, they were taking it much more serious, or they were very scared of this test, and they put that fear into me, and I used that to pass the test.
What would you say your weakness was in the testing?
Food pairing for sure. I think with food pairing, it's so subjective, and you have to be very confident, and you have to think of things that are a little bit out of the box. Like, Sean Paxton, I think was doing the grading the in person, and the first time around, he's like, just doesn't sound very good. That sounds really basic. Like, is this an Applebee's beer dinner? Like, what are you doing? So basically saying off the wall pairings, having conviction about it, saying beers that are somewhat esoteric, seemed to get me some extra points. I don't know. Everybody else could probably say that's BS, but that's what I thought, and that's what I did.
Awesome, man.
That's awesome.
Cool. Avery, you want to go for it?
Sure. So let's see. Took the certified beer server. It must have been probably 2012 or 2013. I passed certified level in 2013. I started out home brewing. I have a background in biology, evolutionary biology, behavioral ecology. So I, always having been a beer science nerd, started home brewing and really just enjoyed that it was kind of a really alternative application of my understanding of science. So I really got into that there as a home brewer in Austin. And after homebrewing for like 6 or 7 months, I was kind of like, well, I would be very curious to see what this is like on a commercial scale. Ended up volunteering at a brewery, at Just Brewery in Austin. And after volunteering there for a while, there was a person there who was an apprentice. And after their 6-month apprenticeship was over, they were hired on as a full-time brewer. So the apprenticeship position was more or less open. And I remember being like, well, I would love to apply for that. It's not really like an official thing that people can apply for. But I remember thinking at the time, like, anything I can do to kind of show that I have some, interest in this and have worked hard in order to learn would definitely help. So I took the certified exam thinking that it might help me get a job there, or at least help me get this apprenticeship, which is like half a job. And I passed it in, I guess, maybe June or July of 2013, maybe. And then in late August, I was granted the apprenticeship there. So there's a part of me that wants to say that there's a correlation, but there might not be. But I do know that like studying for the certified exam definitely helped improve my confidence in what I was doing. I knew that I could talk about style and I could talk about beer and production and everything in a way that wasn't just totally wrong. So I got in 2013, and then 2015 was the first time that I took the master exam, and I felt pretty good about it when I took it. And I think I ended up like a 79
Sounds about right.
on the exam, which wasn't terrible. remember talking to Pat about it after the fact. He was like, "No, you should have been there. You know, it was fine. You should have been there." A lot of people apparently don't make that kind of score, or at least before the advanced level was instituted. People that would get like really low scores, and it's like, you should not have been here for this. So I felt like, okay, you know, I'm not the worst at this. I'm a very competitive person though, and I enjoy taking tests. And so I was very disappointed and very upset. Pat and I met at that exam. And so I was definitely like very angry. Like, it's this guy's fault. But anyway, it's my own fault. I didn't study. It was a hard test. So, and I definitely wasn't prepared for just the kind of like rapid fire oral exams. The oral exams are really hard because you have 10 minutes to basically demonstrate your proficiency in this particular area of beer. And that was challenging. So anyway, I took that exam in 2015, did not pass. Immediately signed up for the next one in 2016. I took it, this was back when they were still offering a spring and a fall. So I took it in the spring of 2015 and then planned to sit for the fall of 2016 exam. And I did sit for that exam. Did not pass that one either, though I was also very close that time around. And was just so angry. I was so upset. And at that point, Pat and I were dating also. And, you know, he sat out from the administration of the exam and everything because obviously it's a conflict of interest. And I wouldn't let him help me study or anything. I was just so hell-bent on making sure he knew that I could fucking pass it on my own. And then I didn't pass it. And, you know, I was working a ton and I thought that I knew, you know, I was very confident in my understanding of process and ingredients. So I knew that part was fine. I've put on so many beer dinners in my career. It's like beer and food pairing is fine. But I, you know, if I had $1 for every time I told somebody, like, I just don't agree with memorizing fact, like statistics of beer. I just don't agree with memorizing something that I can reference just for the hell of it. And I think that probably came back to bite me in the ass because if you spend just a few extra hours memorizing those stats, that will end up giving you like the extra 5 to 10% that you need to pass the exam. So leading into the third time that I took the test in the fall of 2018, I spent a lot of time really solidifying my understanding of styles because that was very much my weak point. My entire beer career has been spent making beers outside the box, not making beers to style. So I realized that that was really kind of the weak point for me. And I spent a lot of time brushing up on all of that. So I think that was probably what ended up getting me past that finish line in the end. Recognizing what my weakness was and then dedicating the time to rectifying that.
Awesome. You kind of mentioned that the oral portion was pretty tough. Is there any specific question or anything you remember particularly where you're just like, oh shit, like I have no clue. How am I going to make up something right now?
You know, the first couple of times I took it, well, I can't remember if Jared Rubin was an oral examiner all 3 times that I took it or not. I think he may have been.
I think so.
Jared Rubin is the founder of Moody Tongue Brewing here in Chicago. He is a Culinary Institute of America graduate. He's an amazing chef. He's you know, brilliant guy.
Sorry.
On cheese. So, and he and I were friends. We knew each other before the exam. So I was like, I remember seeing him in the hall before I went in for my oral exam. And I was like, hey, Jared, you know, he just looked at me and he was like, and I was like, oh my God, he hates me. He doesn't remember me. I'm an idiot. I'm a fool. You know, if you're in the industry, we're all friends. We're all acquaintances. You know, we all know each other. And I don't know. I think that in the beginning, I was kind of like banking on the fact that, like, you know, he knows who I am. He, like, prior experience with me will definitely carry over. And like the first time I took the exam with Jared, he gave me a really high score on the cheese pairing question. The second time he was like, I don't know if she knows what she's talking about. It was just like, oh my God. The first time I was so hell-bent on making sure that he knew that I knew what I was talking about. I even like came up with a haiku before I went into that oral exam. Like, I remember we took a trip right before the test. We were hiking and camping in Utah. And as we were hiking around Arches National Park, I was like reciting the haiku that I was going to say at that oral exam so that he would know just how much I knew my shit. I know my shit so much that I will recite poetry to you about this cheese. And I was so like in the moment during the actual oral exam that I totally forgot that I had poetry.
Do you remember it? Can you read it? Can you recite it for us?
I cannot. Do you remember?
Come on.
No.
It was something about triple cream brie. Yeah, there was definitely gooey.
It was a great haiku
It was
that has
good.
been lost to the ages.
Oh,
I'll look back through my notes.
it's one of the big tragedies. That's great.
Yeah.
That's a minus 20 for me off the bat. Minus 20 for haikus. Gone.
Oh.
All right, Pat, you wanna finish this thing off, and then we'll jump into a few quick questions before we open up a Q&A.
Sounds good. Yeah. So for me, I still very much remember when I kind of got into beer. It was like in between my junior and senior year of college. I remember like starting to become more interested in beer, and I remember like being at a restaurant that had a beer list that had maybe 20 beers or so on it, and looking at it and being like, I feel like it'd be really cool if I could just look at this beer list and based on knowing a little bit about the styles of beer, be able to pick out one that I feel like I would enjoy. And like, that's where it started. I was just like, I want to know a little bit more. So I started trying more beers and tasting more and reading more. And like I said, like I remember that Christmas, my parents gave me How to Brew by John Palmer, which I read. It's like very foundational in learning about brewing process. Next book I read was Tasting Beer by Randy Moser. So I kind of like started learning more and more about beer. And right after I graduated from college, I heard about the Cicerone program. And I was like, hey, I'm good at taking tests, like, and I like beer, so why not? Like, that seems like a totally natural thing to kind of spur my quest for knowledge on. So I took the certified beer server exam that summer. I'm actually going to dovetail this in. I saw a question from Andrew Pallet come through about people doing BJCP in addition to Cicerone program. Basically started trying to get involved in learning more about beer in as many ways as I could at that point. So I started judging homebrew competitions. I joined a group to kind of train up towards the BJCP exam and was using that as a way to prep for my certified Cicerone exam. So we were meeting, I think we met every Thursday for like 12 weeks for like 4 or 5 hours a week. And we just taste through 10 to 12 styles, a couple examples of each alongside the BJCP guidelines. And that was like my foundation of beer style knowledge, but just kept doing more and more things to learn more and more about beer. I took my certified exam in May of 2011 and passed, and I did pretty well on it. And so that fall was the Cicerone program reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to do some grading and proctoring for us? And I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. I was like, cool, I can like get paid a little bit of money on the side to do beer stuff. That's wild. And so I was doing that for like just a little bit. And then I like happened to be in Chicago on a trip. And me being like, God, I would have been like 23 at the time, just like a total fucking idiot. Reached out to Ray.
Definitely.
I mean, I'm still an idiot. But I'm like really stupid. So just like I had been grading for them for like a month, and I reached out to Ray and I was like, hey, I'm going to be in Chicago. Like, do you want to meet up for a beer? And he said yes. So I remember like grabbing a beer at Hopleaf with Ray, and I was like, this is really cool. That's awesome. Like totally just like starstruck nerd at that point. Fast forward maybe 4 months, February of 2012. At that point, I got a call from Ray out of the blue, and he was like, "Hey, you want to come to Chicago for a day and talk about like doing some projects for us?" And I was like, "Okay." And then when I was out there, he's like, "Hey, do you want to move to Chicago and work for us?" And I was like, "I don't know." So I kind of like held off for a couple of months, and then I was like, "No, I do. I think I should do that." So summer of 2012, I moved to Chicago to work for the Cicerone program to manage exam content for the first 2 levels of the program. And within being out here, within the first couple of months, I was like, if I want to grow within the program, I need to get master, because like right now I only have access to the tests that I've passed. I can only oversee the things that I've already accomplished. So if I want to really be able to grow within the program, I've got to take the master exam. So I signed up for it the next time I could take it. I studied my ass off for like 9 months. It helped that I was in a new city where I didn't know a ton of people. And so it was just studying all the damn time. I saw somebody ask in the chat about like, what do you do if you're not working in a brewery and you want to be able to taste beers? I made friends with, it helped that I worked in the industry, but I made friends with bartenders at like 3 or 4 different bars. And in like the 6 months leading up to my exam, I kind of had a rotation. These were craft beer bars, so their list would cycle pretty regularly. And I would go to like 3 of them, each one like once a week, and have the bartender just pour me like 5 random beers that I would just write descriptions on blind, just so that I was doing like as much blind tasting as I could leading into the exam. And then, I took the master exam in spring of 2013. And it was a brutal experience, but I passed, and I was really excited to not have to take it again. That was, I still remember when Ray, because the way that Ray does it is he does phone calls for everybody. He calls every single candidate of the exam to deliver them kind of their top line results. And he usually like fucks with everybody that passed. Like it's just like totally cruel, but he cooks up ways where he's like, I'm gonna like tell them this first and they're gonna think that they failed. And then so like I was working for the program at that point in time, and I'm like sitting in my office just not getting shit done because I'm just like, oh my God, he's making the calls. And just like call after call after call, like just waiting all day, like not knowing what was going to happen. And then like I didn't even see, he sent me an email, was like, all right, you can come in when you're ready. I like didn't see it like until 20 minutes after he sent it. So I came in, and I still remember the first thing I said when he told me I passed was like, oh my God, I'm so happy I don't have to take it again. It is. I mean, it's 2 brutal days. It's, as anybody who's on this call can tell you, like it is,
it's a life suck.
Beyond just like being really challenging and requiring a lot, it's an exhausting, you just pour your brain out through paper essays and tastings and oral exams for just 2 days straight. And I remember getting to the end of the second day, and like everybody from my group was like, okay, we're gonna go back into Chicago and like hit up some bars. And I was like, I'm going home to go to bed. Like I don't see anybody. I'm so tired. So it's yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad I did it. I'm really glad it's behind me.
To add to that, Pat, it's been 8 years since I passed, and I still to this day occasionally think about it and feel a sense of relief that I don't take that test anymore.
I have a quick question for anyone who failed. What was like the difference in the fail call versus the you pass call? If it's like, did he play into like kind of leaning into the way he called you when you failed, or what was the difference there?
2 words.
You passed.
Actually, just 1 word. Fail or pass.
The first 2 times he called me, I was fully expecting to have received a positive phone call, and I didn't tell anybody. I remember the first time I took it, I was at the brewery, and I had walked out to like the end of the tree line, whatever, and I told one person at the brewery, and I remember walking back after receiving the sorry communication, and every person that was at the brewery that day was in the windows looking at me, waiting for me to come back. And I just remember being like, oh my God. Like, I have to tell all of them, like, wrap it up. We're about to go get margaritas. That's exactly what we did. But the time I got the call that was like, you passed, I was in North Carolina for Burial's the Burn Pile Festival in Asheville. And I hadn't talked to Pat for like 2 or 3 days because
he was in Belgium.
He was in Belgium, and he wouldn't tell me whether or not I had passed. And I was like, fucking tell me. And he was like, I can't. I can't. And I was like, fine. We're not talking until I get until I know. We didn't talk for like 3 days, and so I was in Asheville. And I was so hungover. Oh my God, Ray called me, and I was just like deathly hungover. And he was just like, he didn't even fuck with me. He was just like, "Congratulations, you did it." And I was just like, and I cried. And the people were like, "Do you need more coffee? What do you need?" Oh my God, it was awful. And then I got champagne drunk immediately and went and did a talk at Burial. Because I'm a professional.
Oh man, everyone's stories are so great. Okay, so I think there's a lot of questions coming in. Everybody wants the Q&A. I have 3 quick just roundtable questions where whoever wants to answer it. There's no I'm not going to call anybody out. If you feel like answering it, go for it. First one is what's your least favorite, or what do you think is the worst off flavor that you can find in a beer?
Oof.
I will call people out though if I have.
I'll jump in. No, so in theory, it's indole to me, but I'm blind to it. So I'm fine with indole because I can't smell it, but it's the one that is just, I mean, it's gross, right? Like there's no good situation for butyric, so that one to me is
that's mine too. Yeah. Butyric is just awful.
For everyone out there, can you let them know what it's commonly described as far as sensory?
Puke.
Yeah.
And butyric is baby shit.
Yeah.
And that's what it usually smells like for people, but for me, butyric smells like tropical fruit. Like it smells like papaya. So I'm like, nah, whatever.
Bomba fruit.
Yeah, it's all good. For me, chlorophenol.
Well, ethyl butyrate is kind of more of the pineapple-y, right?
It is. There's a lot
and then the butyric acid to me is just like the straight up. It smells like vomit.
Yeah.
And it's really terrible. I'm very sensitive to it, and I got known for being sensitive to it because like me and one other person at Boulevard years ago caught, like when we were moving from a small brew house to a big brew house, we had like this major butyric issue on our new brew house, and we didn't know it, and we weren't catching it on our gas chromatograph, but we caught it in sensory, and it was me and one other guy, and so we were like, and it saved us from selling like 600 barrels of like butyric laden unfiltered wheat beer. It would have been a disaster.
Oh my God.
And value of a sensory program. And so forever we were on the butyric panel. Like, so if there was ever a time where they're like, "Hey, we need you in sensory right now," then like this other guy was in there too. It was like, "Oh yeah, well I know what's coming now. I'm looking for butyric."
Awesome. Okay, next question. Thoughts on properly aging beer. So are there certain styles that lend themselves better to age, or are there certain that you should avoid? And then any specific beer that just sits, I mean, Patrick probably knows quite a few of ours, but any specific beers you call that just get better with age?
English barley wines. Like bitter, a lot of residual sugar, high enough alcohol. Where the oxidation turns into complex, delicious flavors. Doesn't happen with every beer.
Yeah, I'd say there are like 2 things you're looking at for aging beer: high alcohol and high residual sugar. Nice things can happen there. And then if you still have like live bacteria or yeast, interesting things can happen there. We, during quarantine, have cleaned out almost all of our cellar, and most of it was fucking awful. and that's one of the dangers.
We is a strong word.
I let it age too long. So
These were all his beers.
And that's one of the dangers of cellaring beer is sometimes you go, this is really special, I'm going to hold on to it for a long time, and you don't open it until it's a shitty beer.
It dies.
So I am pretty strong in the camp of like, don't age beer too much, but there are some beers that benefit from it, especially, in the context of this being a brewery happy hour. We opened a few brewery beers. I remember when I was out for Patrick's master exam, I collected a bunch of brewery beers, like a case full, and brought them back. And a lot of them I held on to for a number of years, and they held up really well. But a lot of those, once again, are pretty high alcohol beers, sometimes with a fair amount of residual sugar, sometimes with living yeast or bacteria in them. So
I think the other thing I would say is dark. Right, like dark beers tend to they can be interesting.
Yeah.
If you let them go for too long, they're still going to get to a spot where they're pretty one note, but there's a lot more complexity a lot of times in those dark beers. But I also did a 5-year vertical on Miller Lite one time.
Amazing.
I would highly suggest everybody goes out and tries that.
One thing to say real fast from my perspective is that I noticed from owning the brewery is that you get spoiled drinking fresh beer all the time. So when you have beer that's been aged for quite some time, you can tell right away you prefer the fresh stuff, always in my mind. So there isn't anything overall that I think I would prefer having sat in Pat's cellar for a year versus having it right off the brewery's line.
Yeah, none of it was a year old. It was all like 10 years old.
Forget 10 years. You turn that stuff into vinegar.
Cool.
Soy sauce.
All right, 2 more questions. Everybody keep putting your questions in the comments. I have 2 more, and then we're going to jump over to Q&A. So importance of glassware, cleanliness, and then even just the style. Like, what does that add to your beer experience, the sensory experience there?
Cleanliness is huge. It's so important. We were in the Czech Republic last fall, and it's one of those things where over there, it's not even like that's a place where a Cicerone program probably would have a little bit of trouble taking off because they have a really high level, like a really high service standard already. Like it's part of, if you're a bar, your glassware is clean and the beer is beautiful and the head has great retention. And it's just like, it makes for a better drinking experience. And unfortunately, that's not how it is everywhere in the world.
Cool. Good answer.
Anybody else?
I'm going to keep us moving. I want to get everybody out of here before it turns into happy hours. So thoughts on packaging. So I know one of the things that we did this year at the brewery, or last year at the brewery, was we put Black Tuesday in cans. So I just kind of wanted to get people's thoughts on, in general, like what impact or what's the difference between the different pack types? So like bottles, cans, draft, growlers, like any sort of insight you can give everybody on what they're good for or how you see their use.
I'll chime in on that. So I'll start with where you probably think I'm going to start, and that's with the growlers and the crowlers. All the other package types, the differences that shocker. All those other package types are fantastic, right? I mean, the differences that you talk about, are very, very subtle. But when you package something from a draft system into a crowler or growler, you are drastically limiting the shelf life of that beer. So, something filled in a growler or crowler, you can expect to have about a 72-hour shelf life, unless somebody is like filling a growler on like a counter pressure filler. That's the vast minority of people who are doing that.
We have one.
Yeah, well, of course you do. I would expect nothing less from you.
Definitely.
Yeah, but you're picking up oxygen, you're losing carbonation, and it's so there needs to be an expectation about what you're going to get. Now that said, I mean, before quarantine days, I would almost never drink growlers or crowlers. It just is not. I'd buy packaged beer off a professional line that was designed to keep dissolved oxygen low and preserve carbonation and all that. But since all this, in order to support my friends who own breweries and to, support local, I've consumed, 100 times. I don't know. I've consumed a lot more crowlers and growlers than I ever thought I would.
1 million times.
1 million times more. Yeah. And I'm having good experiences, right? But I also know what to expect. And like there's one brewery where I already knew that their carbonation level was a little low. And when I bought the crowlers, I didn't like it as much because that little bit of carbonation loss brought that down even further. And then I just didn't really enjoy the beer, right? So but I knew what to expect. I wasn't disappointed because I knew that. And I'm not blaming them for that. They're doing what they can to stay in business right now. So, it's, that's my big thing about packaging is crowlers and growlers. Set your expectations realistically.
Awesome. All right. That was a great answer. Let's get to what everybody really wants. We've had so many questions coming in for you guys. So I'm going to Valerie is behind the scenes, kind of start pulling up some of these questions and let's get some answers. Other than Patrick Rue, did anyone else start out through the
You want to hear from me?
No, we don't want to hear from you. Did anyone else start through the BJCP before going through the Cicerone program? If so, thoughts on the training between the two programs other than draft tech and recipes?
I already kind of mentioned that I very much used it as a way to study for certified Cicerone exam. And, the big differences between the program, like Andrew brought up, there's no draft or keeping and serving on BJCP. There's no beer and food pairing on BJCP. The focus on brewing is probably a little bit heavier on BJCP because it is geared towards homebrew judging. So, those are some of the key differences in the content, at least. Personally, I would say Cicerone maybe hews a little bit more towards practical application because BJCP's focus is very narrow. It's about producing people who are good homebrew competition judges, which does then carry over to being just like a good competition judge. But yeah, that would probably be the main parallel I would draw. In terms of difficulty comparison, I would map national level BJCP to certified Cicerone. And I feel like I can say that with some confidence because I got both of, I got national BJCP right around the same time I got certified Cicerone.
Are you not a Grandmaster? I'm
a master now. Grandmaster, so the difference between Grandmaster and Master is you just have to grade a bunch of fucking exams.
For free.
I graded some of them and I was like, I can't do this. So.
Do the BJCP Masters have a different handshake than the Master Cicerones?
Yeah.
That's what everybody wants to know.
I'm going to say yes, but Neil, did you point out you were also doing BJCP shit beforehand?
Yeah, I took the BJCP exam in 99. It's either 98 or 99. And I
was 12.
Oh,
Neil, we have the same birthday.
I know. We're
birthday twins.
Yeah, we're birthday twins, only not the same age. I wasn't 12 when I took BJCP.
I mean, I was drinking beer. I wasn't doing BJCP shit.
Yeah, I was still brewing at Boulevard, and so I was brewing professionally, but I wanted to learn more, and it was kind of like I was talking about when I was home brewing, several years before that. I just wanted to learn more about it, and I liked talking about it. I liked talking to people about it, and I was interested in judging in competitions too. And there, I got to know people in the community in Kansas City, and there was a couple that ran a homebrew supply shop, and they taught classes on beer judge certification program and administered the exam in their living room of their house. And And so I just decided to be fun to do. And I asked a bunch of people I worked with, hey, you want to do these BJCP classes and take the test? And they're all like, yeah, no. I just went and did it on my own. And I got, I didn't know a whole lot back then. I got recognized, which is the lowest level of passing with BJCP. And then I never really did anything with it after that. I mean, I judged in homebrew competitions for a while, but then I just kind of moved on. And as I started to judge at Great American Beer Festival, I judged for several years at GABF, and then all of a sudden, there was this point at which all these points that BJCP started to recognize judging points for GABF. So they all of a sudden all these points transferred over, and out of the blue, after years of nothing for BJCP, I get this email out of nowhere that says, "You've attained the rank of certified." Cool. I got all these judging points now. So I haven't done anything with it since then. So I still maintain the rank of certified.
Awesome. Okay, our next question is, this is a tough one. What brewery would you say does the most best examples of style? American, English, German, Irish, any country styles you think gets overshadowed?
It's a complicated question, because would you expect one brewery to be able to do all of those different regional styles exceptionally well? Or would you expect one brewery to kind of hone in on one of these regional schools of thought and really execute those very well?
And does it iron the most medals?
Can we bring the question back up? That was just leave them up so we can. That one kind of lost me too.
The question totally makes sense. It's just like like Avery was saying, I feel like in a lot of cases you'll have breweries where it's like, this brewery makes really phenomenal English beer. It's a really phenomenal Belgian beer.
Hogshead in Denver.
Hogshead. I was going to say the same one.
Yeah.
Yes, because they are the best makers of British style beers in the U.S. Period. End of story.
Like Allagash for Belgian beer, I would say, is one of the better producers of classic Belgian styles.
I saw a few questions about what I was drinking before. I'm not drinking it now, but KC Beer Co. Pils. That's a local company here in Kansas City. They specialize in German lagers, and they do a fantastic job. But and that's their niche. They're not cranking out hazy IPAs and fruited sours with lactose. They're making German lagers, and they're fantastic. Another one I'll call out is a brewery in St. Louis called Civil Life.
It's great English beer.
Yes.
Yeah, they make amazing English ales that are just spot on. And you're not going to go and find anything that's totally off the hook in one direction or another. These are classic. These are straight interpretations of classic styles, and they nail it. They're so good.
St. Louis has it lucky. I mean, they've got them. They also have Urban Chestnut for German styles.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I were to pick one brewery, the brewery that maybe comes to mind for me is Sierra Nevada. Sierra Nevada is super classic American styles, but also I feel like for anything that they brew that is outside of kind of the American canon, they do a pretty good job of, I think about their Hefeweizen is really true to style. So I don't know. It's hard to find a brewery where they do just every style geography and do them classic styles really well.
There is a brewery that does everything they do is pretty much spot on. You can expect it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, but Sierra Nevada, I mean, they just don't make bad.
No wrong.
All right, let's push to this next one. So my main question is, what advice do you have for those of us who are not in the beer industry on what elements we may need to study a bit more or focus on in more depth, since we are not surrounded by beer professionals during our normal workdays?
Brian, why can't you just enjoy drinking beer? Why do you have to study it? I know, Brian. They're really good dudes, really smart, but there is such a thing as enjoying something.
Don't kill your passion.
Right.
I will say, if that's like a Cicerone specific question, I can speak as somebody who took the certified exam coming from outside the industry. The hardest area for me was keeping and serving, specifically draft systems, because, you know, styles, brewing, like all of those things you can experience as a consumer and you can read about as a consumer. To really understand a draft system, you kind of have to get your hands on one. And so if you're trying to go for Cicerone stuff and you want to learn more about a draft system, make friends with somebody at a bar and just ask, like, get your hands on a draft system. Even just like a kegerator can be enough to like really learn how a draft system works and to learn to troubleshoot that sort of thing. That was, for me at least, when I was going through that level, that was the hardest part for me because I didn't have any hands-on experience with it at that point.
Awesome. All right, let's pull up the next question here. Follow up to my question. How do you train or develop your palate outside of drinking beer?
I've got a couple of random ones that I went through. So I took this a little bit of the non-traditional approach. So a lot of drinking beer. So that's, I mean, you need to, right? It's the practice makes perfect sort of thing, and twist my arm on that one. But I did a lot of studying trips, going to the local liquor store and filling up my cart. But you kind of make it a lifestyle, quite honestly, when you're doing this sort of thing and you're studying it and you're living it. So I was guessing like the flavor, you know, we'd have a dish or a smoothie or whatever it was and trying to guess the ingredients that were in that smoothie. Blind tasting jelly beans is something that I started doing with the guys that I talked about earlier. So Jelly Belly ones particularly do a really good job of like flavors. So you blind taste jelly beans and try to pick out which jelly bean it is or what sort of flavors, or describe the flavors of those jelly beans. A good way to not get drunk as you're trying to study afterwards and stuff, but just kind of building your palate and practicing. Got thrown out of Whole Foods for smelling all the essential oils and trying to build. It was just one of those things where you go through and you try to incorporate it in these off ways. I had spices that I had in like unlabeled jars and would try to like blind taste them. You can't look at them because it's pretty clear once you do that. But blind tasting or smelling aromas from spices and trying to build up your vocabulary, and then practice makes perfect. I would say.
I think maybe I could weigh in for just a second. Something that helped me tremendously was just the conscious effort of thinking about what you're eating or tasting or smelling in general, because, you know, your nose and your palate's turned on all the time, 24/7. So if you're walking someplace, say you're walking to work one day and you smell something burning, you don't have to consciously try that to smell that. It pops in your head and, oh, it's something I recognize, smoke, and something's on fire. But there's so many subtle things that you're smelling all the time that you're not connecting to that conscious part of the brain. So if you take the second and maybe do some of the exercises that Jason said, then you'll start thinking a lot about that, that what's going on, you know, I think unconsciously. So it's making that unconscious connection, I think, which is what really took it to the next level for me in my experience. And I think you have there's a school of thought that not everybody can do it. You know, you're just a super taster, or you can taste other things that people can't. Or I don't buy that at all. I think you can train yourself to do anything. In particular, I'm a growth mindset kind of person. Back to my skill in the Master Cicerone, which is perseverance. But even if you're really bad at it, I mean, there are some exceptions. I've heard that certain medications, particularly like HIV, antivirals, will cut down on your ability to smell totally. But in the most, you know, if you have standard biology and you don't have anything, you know, wrong with you, then you can become fantastic with a conscious effort. So never be discouraged. And I think for the people that are going up through the Cicerone at different levels, and they get really intimidated by that first set of beers that's in front of them, they're trying to figure out, you know, what the smells are. And you pick one up and you say, oh man, I can't get anything. And then your brain gets in this loop and you get distracted and you won't be able to get anything else. So I think it's there's a my personal opinion, maybe some of the other Master Cicerones on call here tonight could weigh in. I'd be interested in your perspective, but I think a big part of it is mindfulness in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I want to hop on that just for like 15 seconds because I think that is such an important point. Like, at this point, I consider that I have like a pretty good palate, but I very much do not feel like I was born with anything exceptional about my palate. Like, it was just a lot of hard work of doing things like what Jason was talking about, like going to the florist and smelling different flowers or smelling different spices, or like just consciously paying attention and building my flavor vocabulary and my kind of my aroma memory that way. Working for Cicerone, I do a ton of instruction. I hear from people all the time, like, I'm just not a good taster. I'm just not good at that. And like Joe said, like, there are a very small percentage of people where it's like, yes, you have something maybe like medical that prevents you from smelling really well. But in most cases, being a good taster is just a practice thing. It's like any other skill set. Like, if you practice at it, you can be a phenomenal taster. It just takes concerted effort.
I couldn't second that more, Pat.
Yeah, one of the things that I would say is I always kind of equated your palate and tasting things to like memory, that game you played with when you were a kid, right? Like, you flip over one card. Everybody's good at flipping over that first card. You see the picture and it's a banana or it's an apple, whatever that is. The tricky part is connecting that spot in your brain where you find that second card, right? And you actually find the words for it. So everybody does a really good job of smelling things. So your palate's fine. It's not broken. It's your ability to then take that next step and describe the flavors that you need to really work on. So I totally agree with that. Like, everybody's got a good palate. Your nose is not broken. Your sense of taste, all that good stuff, it's not broken. It's really what you have to practice is putting it into words and then building on the description. So you get from that real basic level, like, this is a banana. You start to add the age of that banana, how ripe it is, whether it's brown or not. You start to the peel or the actual fruit itself, and you start to build up those descriptive vocabulary words based on that.
I think that's a great way of articulating it, and that's something that I try to communicate with folks as well when I teach about flavor. I feel very fortunate to have gone into this industry because, like, I think about it and I feel like I would have probably lost half of the memories that I currently have had I not gone into this industry. Flavor and aroma memories are so strong and are huge in a person's memory scape. And it's not something that we talk about all the time. And for me, you smell something and you're like, oh, it smells so familiar, and I just can't quite put my finger on where I've smelled that before. So what Jason was saying, like flipping over that, remembering where that first card was to flip over, it is very much a practice. And once you do it frequently and you begin kind of calcifying that process, you can access those memories much quicker. And the second you smell something that you've smelled before, you're like, where did I smell that before? And you can trace back to where, at least maybe where the most recent experience of that sense was. And it's, I don't know, for me, it's a very satisfying experience to be able to do that.
One last thing I want to just say real fast about that. One thing that I don't know if maybe many of you remember from Bill's class, maybe I was talking with Bill from Aruxa on the side, where he said that when you smell a beer or you're trying to or pick up the aroma, it's like walking through a crowded room, and each one of the people represent an aroma that you're smelling in the beer. When you walk through the room and you don't know anybody, you know that those aromas are there. But it's not until somebody introduces you to those people that you'll be able to identify those aromas that you've been smelling maybe your whole entire life. So the cool thing is that it's just like meeting somebody, where you meet them the first time and they say, oh yeah, this is Bill, this is Pat, this is Daniel, whoever. And you go back to that crowded room again and you say, I was introduced to that person. What was their name again? And it's that conscious effort of remembering and the practice over and over again, where you can walk through and then maybe name everybody's name in the room, but they were there the whole time. That's the point.
Cool. Let's let's push on. I want to hit maybe 3 more questions before we wrap this thing up. So next one up is, and it sounds like we kind of touched on this one already a little bit, but so maybe just quick insight on the quest to advance. Feeling a bit overwhelmed at the moment. Besides tasting, what is the best way to tackle the material? It sounds like, I mean, we kind of answered this already. So if anybody has a quick insight on this one, we'll push to another question.
I tried to make, so anything in the Oxford guide that I didn't recognize, I made a flashcard out of, and then it, ended up being like 1,000 different things. And then, bring out 20 different flashcards in the morning, 20 in the afternoon, 20 at night, and you get through it and you learn it.
Yeah, and I'll just jump on it quick too. Like, go experience the stuff wherever you can too, because it helps to cement the memories. So if you talk about beer and food, like go out to eat and pair it with something, try it, and then what if that didn't work? What else would have worked with that? What do you think? Try a couple things with it. I think the more experiences you can have, it kind of breaks up the monotony of reading all of the story, and it keeps it fun too. So try to make sure you're incorporating experience on top of the reading.
Cool. Okay, here's a simple one from former brewery employee Kevin. What's up, Kevin? What inspired you to brew?
Boulevard Pale Ale.
Simple. That was an easy one. Patrick.
Making something that nobody's ever tasted. Just discovery.
Awesome. Okay. Let's. What else do we got cooking? Joe, you want to touch on that one really quickly too?
Sure. Yeah. One that I loved was, let's see, is it Captain Lawrence? Their brewery, St. Vincent's Double. I don't know if they make it anymore, but I love that beer so much when I was a home brewer that I was doing everything I could to figure out how to make that style. And I think after, almost 10 years of practice now, I've gotten pretty good at it. But I still love it as much as I did day one.
You guys just medaled in double this last year, right? At JBS?
Yep. Thank you.
Nice.
Fuck yeah, man.
All right, here's a good one. To what degree can you guys just, congrats, Joe, by the way, so I didn't mean to cut you off. To what degree can you just turn it off and enjoy a beer? Like, do you go out with friends and do you talk their ears off about your sensory notes, or can you just go out and can you just go out and have a good time and have a couple beers?
I would say personally, I don't try to talk anybody's ear off about what I'm drinking. More, what I would say where the issue comes in is you do, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, you do potentially get to a place where you have all these flavors that you recognize, and a lot of them are potentially flaws. And so sometimes you'll have a beer and you'll be like, beer has a significant flaw and I can't really overlook that. However, like if I'm in a place where I'm just like looking to drink a beer, it's like, is this beer flawed or is it fine? If it's fine, yeah, I can crush it and it's good.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that. It depends on if there are really obvious flaws that are like terrible, right? And I think that's probably the case with anybody who's drinking beer, right? Like, there's plenty of times where I'm drinking beer with people and I'm not thinking about it, and I'll get a beer and like, oh man, like this is really old, but whatever, and just like put it out of my mind. It's like we're not here to like analyze it too much, but sometimes you get one that's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is really, really bad. Like I can't even drink this. Like, it's obviously like infected from a terribly dirty draft system or something that's just like completely disgusting. Yeah, I'm sending it back.
Yeah, and what I would say too is that you can turn it off to a certain extent, to the extent that these guys are talking about too. But it's also like I got into this thing because it's something I'm passionate about. Yeah. So actually, there's a part of it that it's actually fun for me to do that. I don't do the thing like Pat was talking about where I'm sitting there talking about. I'm not trying to wax poetic, talk about all the crazy. If I did, I'd expect to get things thrown at me and everything else. But it's still fun for me to go through and try to figure out and pick out things in these beers and do that sort of thing from a sensory standpoint. So I don't turn it off, but it's probably more by choice than anything else.
Cool. Anyone else want to touch on that one, or I'll move on to this yeast question. So during your testing, do certain yeast esters cause a perceived difference in style? And if so, how do you adjust for that?
Yeah, I think yeast esters are a big indicator of what the beer style is. And it's, for me, it's like the most easy way for me to tell what style of a beer, assuming it's an ale, that, of what I can expect it to be.
So Patrick, you're narrowing down styles based on the ester profile. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, yeah, more for like Belgian style or say German Hefeweizen or an English, bitter. Those have very, very distinct, ester profiles. So I think those are helpful in discovering what the beer is, I think.
Cool. Okay, we're coming up on over an hour and a half now. I'm going to ask, first of all, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks everybody watching. I'm going to kind of wrap this thing up with one last question we like to ask everybody that comes on. So everyone go around and answer this one. And maybe you don't have a guilty pleasure beer. Maybe you don't consider any beer a guilty pleasure. But if you do have one, what's your guilty pleasure beer? Patrick, start it off for us, dude.
Bohemia.
Nice.
It's good. It's a good beer. Just because it's Mexican doesn't mean it's not good. Not a racist thing. I love Mexican food more than anything, but most Mexican beer isn't excellent.
Oh man. Pat, you want to touch this one?
I don't know if I can even call it a guilty pleasure because it's such a good beer. In that category, I'd probably go Coors Banquet. I've got a deep love here.
Nice. Avery.
I would say for me, I'm going to go with a style and not a brand.
Smart.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Stouts, like, I'm not going to say pastry stout, but like thick, 2 C's, stout, high ABV. That shit I will consume in large quantities in short order.
Awesome.
You can come over if you want. Stay 6 feet away, but
and also not just for the beer, but also to hang out with your dog.
Yeah, that's right.
So
I got 2 answers. One is High Life. I love High Life.
Oh, man, that's horrible.
And and I don't really feel guilty about it either. The other one is Hazy IPA. I freaking love Hazy IPA.
No, Neil, no.
Yeah.
I still like you.
Suck it, everybody. Hazy.
Awesome.
I had no idea.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna say High Life as well as one. And again, don't feel guilty about it whatsoever. But High Life is my one.
Company man.
I know.
I can't do it. Neil stole my thunder. I was gonna say I really do enjoy the hazy beers too. I'm not apologizing, but like somebody said to me once, there's no shortage of hazy IPAs, but there is a shortage of great hazy IPAs. So
yeah, I'm gonna back up. I'm gonna back this thing up for you, Joe, and for myself. The cool thing about American brewing tradition, as we've created it in the past 20 to 30 years, is innovation and creating new styles.
Yeah.
And if you think you're going to put a stick in the mud and say we're not going to create anything new anymore, and like this is where it all stops,
right,
then you're mistaken. Brewers are still going to create new things. You're going to create new things that taste good. So if you don't like it, tough shit.
That's right.
I agree.
Hazy boys.
Boys.
Oh my god.
Awesome. I think that's a good place to kind of wrap this thing up. Thanks again, everybody, for coming on. Thanks everybody for watching. And we're signing out as soon as Valerie ends the broadcast. Do your thing, Val.
Thanks for having us.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.